Hey there, friends, and possibly longtime followers of this channel. I'm liable to piss some of you off on this video. But first, guys, go check out my friends over at cmmg.com. These guys have some really cool stuff over there. You've seen some of the rifles and firearms that I have that I've purchased from them. Love these guys. Great finishes, great products, a nice selection of products. But guess what? They also have this really cool mystery box. This mystery box is really cool. I have a video that I put out on this specifically to show you what I got in my mystery box. Use my code FTATF. Again, my code is FTATF. Get 10% off your very own mystery box and get some cool stuff, some cool CMMG swag. Go check them out, cmmg.com. Well, friends, last year at about this same time, you'll remember the, quote, bipartisan Safer Communities Act that came out. One of the first, I guess you could call it, main pieces of anti-gun legislation that's been out in quite some time. And of course, we had very many turncoat Republicans on that list. We expected all the Democrats to be on there, which they were, but a lot of the Republicans were on there as well. Now, what amazes me is there's so many in our community, the gun community, who I find that will parrot a lot of the stuff that the left says, the anti-gun stuff, the gun control stuff, because they believe in the slave masters that push this crazy narrative out there that we got to do something. Just because something tragic happens, somebody thinks there has to be something. Just, we got to do something. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how stupid it is, something has to be done. Well, that's how we got here. That's how this legislation got passed last year. Uvalde kind of pushed that through. I made some comments in my video last year that I saw one of the things, and I picked this apart very specifically in the video last year, that one of the things, provisions that it pointed out in this legislation was that if you sold a firearm for profit, that you would be considered a non-licensed dealer. Whoa, I got all kind of blowback. Everybody was like, oh, we know what that means. They're talking about people who aren't FFLs that sell firearms. They're not talking about private sales, because I specifically pointed out that this wording would lead to the fact that you and I could no longer give or sell a firearm to somebody because we would be considered doing it for profit. I guess giving, there'd be a gray area there, but you certainly couldn't sell one to a friend. That was for sure. That was in the wording. And of course, I was accused of misrepresenting the wording. Oh, I misinterpreted. Maybe I didn't understand it. I'm stupid. I'm stupid because I thought that the politicians would go, oh no, come on, man, we didn't mean you guys. We're talking about businesses. We would never apply the actual wording of the bill to you. You're just a regular old John Q. citizen. That doesn't apply to you. And I got a lot of blowback on my videos and a lot of people saying that I was fear-mongering. Well, guess what? It would appear that that exact same thing is what they are working on right now. They are putting together the actual rules, working the White House and the ATF are working together to assemble a set of rules now that would apply to you and I if we want to personally sell a firearm for profit. Doesn't matter if you're a business or not. You're a little old person. You're a peasant. You can't do it anymore. I hate to say I told you so. I really hate to say that. I tell you what, I won't say I told you so. We'll leave it at that. I mentioned back then, and I will say this again. All that is a backdoor way to get rid of what they have incorrectly called the gun show loophole all this time. They've never wanted us to be able to transfer firearms to one another. They've never wanted us to give, sell, trade, anything like that. That was anything outside of what an FFL dealer would normally do. They've always been bothered by that, even though that's not a high level of percentages of guns used in crimes. Guns coming from FFL dealers are stolen and used in crimes all the time. This was just another way. They wanted the what? You can say it, the control. Because when you're not filling out a 4473 and not calling in a NICS background check, you're not going into the illegal registration that the ATF has. Don't tell me that there's no such thing as that. The ATF has over 1 billion now illegal electronic records that they have scanned of 4473s. They, in fact, do have an illegal registry. If you don't believe that, you are either stupid, naive, or your head is so far into the sand that there is no amount of facts that will ever penetrate your thick-ass skull. They have a registration, and the one way around it is when you are selling your guns privately to other individuals out there. This is their way to get around that, or at least to threaten you, because, you and I say this, how would they know? Well, you know how they would know? because they're going to expect every gun to be registered. Why would they put anything in place? Why? Anything. Would they do this if they couldn't monitor it? Think about this for a second. Why would they preclude you and I from a private sale to another friend or associate unless they could track it? They wouldn't. So that means they will have a system to track this. That's what you're going to expect to see. Again, they wouldn't put a rule in here that they can't control, track, trace, or whichever. They have to have a mechanism in place to know whether or not these guns are sold or whatever. Or else there's no way for them to know unless it's hearsay. So you're going to have to look for what's coming down. There's a reason why they're taking an extra long time between the White House and the ATF to put the, quote, rules in place in order to manage this whole system. Because there will have to be some kind of a way to trace and track this kinds of stuff, which will in turn end up being a full-scale illegal registration. The New York Times article said the regulations required to put the new law into effect, expected to be released soon, would require anyone who earns a profit from selling firearms to obtain a federal license and conduct background checks. Oh, it can't mean me, right? Let's continue. Previously, dealers were required to join the federal system only if they derived their chief livelihood from selling weapons. The regulations could set a threshold number of transactions that would define a dealer. Gun control groups hope to see it at 5 sales a year or lower. Now I have a couple of questions on this. First of all, how did you get to the number 5? Why is that your magic number? Second, why are gun control groups having anything to do with this legislation? Here we go again with Congress siding with a particular side that's going to help them write the bill, because Congress knows nothing about guns, so they're eliciting the help of a far left-leaning group to help them write this legislation. And again, they're hoping for 5 sales a year. Now they're marketing a lot of this wording that you see here to make you feel better as a person, that it can't possibly be you, right? It's simply online retailers. That's not true. If the wording can be applied to you, it will be applied to you. Just like this part of the article says, while the law does not include any explicit reference to online gun sales, legislators say it is their best chance to impose minimum safeguards on the rapidly growing percentage of sales that occur through internet retailers. So they're saying in this article, and so are the politicians, that yeah, we're not specifically pointing out online dealers, but we do expect to gather them up in the net. Well, they're not specifying online dealers because they don't mean just online dealers. The online dealers, believe it or not, even though they deal in a whole lot of sales, or a very small percentage of what they're after the private sales between you and I. Now, one of the lead scumbags for Everytown for Gun Safety said that imagine if the TSA had 2 lines for security, one where you're a screen and one where you aren't. They're implying that you've got people who are transferring firearms, selling firearms, who are not using the background check system, and some who are. Again, all this is a backdoor elimination of private sales. They've tried it other ways before and they've failed at it. This is a new attempt at outlawing private sales or private transfers. Folks, let me explain something to you real quick. First of all, stop trusting federal government. Stop trusting them. Stop trusting politicians. When a politician tells you, oh, that's not what we meant by that wording, if that wording can be twisted, used, or just read and applied to anything else, it will be applied to that thing at some point. There are very intelligent attorneys and high-priced attorneys that help write this legislation. It's not an accident whenever they don't specify something. So in other words, this article right here makes it look like they're going after strictly online retailers, but they didn't write that they were going after online retailers in the legislation. The legislation is written to apply to every single one of us. The article is just making it seem like that's what they're going for. And that's what they want. They don't want you getting outraged at it. Now again, this bill is already in place. This legislation is already in place. But they don't want you to get outraged until it's too late. Until you start realizing they meant you all along. You were part of the plan all along. You were just too naive or stupid, and you didn't listen to the people that were telling you this is going to apply to you. Oh no, it couldn't. You're fear-mongering. Well, guess what? Now it's you they're talking about. Another thing that we probably ought to be thinking about is look at it this way. if there are sellers, there's also buyers, right? They're trying to restrict down to 5 or less firearms a year that a person can sell. At what point does that trickle down to the buyer? At what point do they begin to limit the amount of firearms that you can now buy? Because we're talking about two parties here, and they've already got one covered. You don't think you're next? You don't think that it's going to be a matter of you can only buy so many? Look, when you buy handguns now, I don't know if you've bought more than one handgun at the same time recently, but if you buy 2 handguns, you are put on a list as having bought 2 handguns. Now, you're not delayed, typically not delayed unless you would fall under the normal delay. But ask any FFL, if you go in to purchase 2 handguns, they have a system in place, the ATF does, to report you as purchasing 2 handguns. Why? I don't know. But I've been on that list several times. I've gone in and happened to see 2 handguns that I like, or maybe even if I have a handgun sent to me from a manufacturer and I buy one while I'm there, or 2 guns come to me, 2 handguns possibly from a gun manufacturer that I'm not even purchasing, but I'm receiving them through an FFL transaction. I'm put on that list to the to the ATF, stating that I left there with 2 handguns that day. So there's things happening now that not everybody even realizes are happening out there. At some point, they're going to try to control how much ammunition and how many firearms you can buy in a certain amount of time. This is just a precursor to it. This is the hint that you need to know what else is coming. Because don't think they're not asking, well, if they fell for this, what else can we get by?
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.